Wrathful compassion. Doing the right thing can absolutely put you in your villain era. We've got High Priestess, Leadership, and Enter at Your Own Risk, Pause. And the way that these plopped out of the deck, they came out sideways, and I thought it was interesting that they were facing two different directions. So I'm interpreting that as in motion, like this is a current event that is underway. Um, and for timing, the way I interpret timing for tarot readings is like books. They have relevance for the time in which they were published, but they mean what they mean to you when you happen upon them. Uh, but in the last reading, we did briefly mention villain era in working your way through a difficult situation where rest may have been kept away from you, and setting boundaries and things like that. That often gets referred to, like, in kind of a cheeky way as, pardon the motorcycle out there, whatever that was. But it gets referred to in kind of a fun, teasing way as the villain era, because now you're putting your foot down, and people who previously benefited from a lack of boundaries, maybe even naivete, a lack of knowledge of something, now they're mad that they can't treat you in the way that they knew was wrong the whole time. So I wanted to explore that a little bit. So we'll start getting some cards here. And I mean, on the surface of these cards, the first thing that came to mind was like an underworld journey, you know, Dark Night of the Soul, individuation, things like that. But I wanted to kind of ground that into reality, and I did the cipher thing, like, you know, just looking deeper into the numbers, and the tarot correspondence is the Justice card and the Temperance card. And so that's where I got Wrathful Compassion from. Because on the Temperance card, that's typically Archangel Michael on there, the warrior angel. So doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it makes you the bad guy. But regarding what? Serpent's Embrace. And the Abyssal Architect in reverse. Kind of getting loosening yourself from deception. But there's also, it feels broader than that. And I think I'm getting that from the High Priestess, just because that archetype, looking so deeply into secrets and looking through the veil, you know, trying to affect the opinions of a group or something. Because I'm generally not in favor of trying to change people's minds, but I am in favor of sharing accurate information, or information about, hey, this is currently happening and it's wrong, like it needs to stop. So kind of freeing maybe yourself and others from that conditioning. And I got the wind rune. It's like motion of thought. Let's get a little more. So what opinions need to be changed, or what needs to come to the surface? Because I'm almost getting like conditioning from that. Like psychological conditioning. And we've got the Six of Pentacles in reverse. This is unequal give and take. I mean, what just came to mind was more at a macro scale. Like, I'm kind of getting the idea of protesting a little bit, getting more involved in social justice issues, like seeing the system for what it is, that it doesn't benefit the working class, like all the wages and such that are being extracted off of our backs. And maybe that's something you were quiet about previously. Maybe just to, I don't know, placate, if you will. You know, not trying to rock the boat within the social circle, trying to fit in, which, no judgment here. We have an innate need to fit in with our group. But once you go through things like individuation, the dark night of the soul, whatnot, it becomes intolerable to not live in your authenticity, to have to mask, and you cannot keep pretending that something we can all see, like right in front of us, is not going on. And so that abyssal architect in reverse, it's like something trying to be constructed, a perception, something like that, an illusion. It's not working. The Tower in reverse, trying to prevent whatever respective system from crumbling, from falling, from getting damaged, which, if it relies on the exploitation of the people that it's dependent on for its success, it's a bad system. I just cannot believe the obscene amount of wealth that's just sitting unused by these billionaires that will tout that they're good at business, but like, look how you treat your people. How can you think you're good at business when you're starving your people and double dipping into like government funding because the employees have to rely on things like SNAP and things like that, and then not paying taxes? Like, it's just spiraling out of control. And I think more and more people are kind of looking around and realizing how preventable a lot of these problems are. It just depends on who is actually in possession of power. And the dice roll that I got is Capricorn, Venus, and the 10th house. So I'm kind of getting some tough love lessons regarding like structures, systems, stuff like that. Because there's only so much shaking the foundation can take, and that includes like what the workers are being put through. That is the foundation of all these things. But maybe that's something that, like, speaking up about those things, maybe that's made you unpopular at parties or something. Two of Wands. Thinking of where to go. So I feel like after you go through major changes like that come through individuation and such, there's a natural shift that's going to occur in your social circle, maybe even your relationship. That's a pretty rocky sea for a pairing to go through. But I remember really early on, like just freshly dumped out on the other shore of the individuation process, like fried, beaten, frazzled, destroyed. um, I remember feeling so unsure of myself, almost like a phony, if you will, because I was looking back on all these memories of myself trying to build a life and build relationships and whatnot on an inauthentic self. And it's not that I had bad intentions, it's I wasn't fully connected to self. And so the foundation was just off. It wasn't. I'll get one of these. It just wasn't built properly, if you will. Because if you don't get a chance to really self-discover in youth, and you have to bury that authentic self for one reason or another, then your life starts getting built on the foundation of the persona and not the self. And that's like a castle built on sand. So at a more micro level, what is this wrathful compassion about? Because it seemed a little veiled, I guess, with the High Priestess. It's kind of why I wanted to cipher through with the numbers and the tarot correspondence, because this doesn't seem loud. Like, protests are very loud and they're very important, but there's also quiet work to be done in the background. You know, like, I just saw something that Mom Donnie did. There's a lawsuit that had like a $12 million settlement regarding like opioids or something, and that's all being put to like recovery programs and things like that. I don't think that lawsuit was spoken of until like the process was complete. And so that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. It's something underway, but not, we don't have a bullhorn about it. So what's the more micro lens? And it can feel weird at first, starting to speak up about things you were quiet about, just to keep the social interactions smooth, I guess. Not wanting to cause conflict. But it's just, it becomes so painful to have to mask those things. The blooming decay. Yeah, it really eats away at you. At your peace of mind. Because having to suppress the self, it's a really painful experience, even if it's an unconscious process through like trauma. Because when it happens in that regard, at least in my experience, it didn't necessarily feel inauthentic. Like there was kind of a whisper, kind of an echo, you know, and you can see it represented in behaviors and things like that, that something's clearly amiss. Just can't quite put your finger on it. But then once you have the underworld experience, then you can really look back at those areas where you were muting yourself, trying to maybe even fawn to keep the peace. And if you have to be inauthentic to keep the peace. It's not a peaceful environment. The masculine. And this always makes me think of the rune. It's one for Tyr. Can't remember the actual name. But the god Tyr in the Norse pantheon, he knowingly sacrificed his right arm, and he's a warrior, but knowingly sacrificed his right arm to bind Fenrir to prevent Ragnarok, the apocalyptic event. So maybe you're doing something at a micro level that makes you a pariah. And that's kind of the rub when it comes to wrathful compassion, when you have to step in to bring something to an end. You're going to be the bad guy. Even if and when you are proven right, that you are doing the right thing, there's still going to be people that look at you as a how dare you disrupt the status quo. To which I would say, like, how dare you expect me to be okay with being harmed and exploited and like that? No, I'm not sacrificing myself for the comfort of the group. Absolutely not. But people don't like that. People like the self-sacrificial Instagram blurb, reductionist. Think of everybody but yourself. 8 of Cups. And it kind of came out sideways. So maybe you're in the process of leaving whatever this system is. Maybe you've emotionally detached from it, but you're still in it, trying to physically detach yourself. Like, if it's like a job situation and they've done something shady that has harmed your finances in some way, maybe you're in a legal battle with them, or you're in process of finding a new job. But it's the sense of it is kind of that like senioritis, you know, the last couple weeks, month or so of like your high school, college, whatever, where you're just like, I'm over it. I know I'm leaving. I'm just still physically trapped here. Still trying to sort out the logistics. Because there will be, I think, in a situation where you might become... There's a lot of sirens out there. And a lot of people associate sirens to Archangel Michael. I was talking about the Temperance card. But in situations where someone ends up the pariah, even if and when you're proven right, it still may be an environment you need to get out of. It might not be a resolvable, fixable situation, because wrathful compassion is to bring wrongdoing to an end. It's not for you necessarily to take on the responsibility of fixing everything. It's stopping harm is really what it's about. Four of Pentacles in reverse. Relinquishing control, surrender of how this is going to turn out, which can be really difficult, especially if it's a job situation and it's Pentacles. Like, there's a lot of coins about on the ground there, and it kind of looks like a prison, actually. I mean, he's on the opening part of the door, but the kitty's looking out the window and stuff. And it can be so frustrating when you know you're done with a situation, but the situation just isn't over. The situation isn't done with you. But that could be a bit of go with the flow. Because maybe that will lead to a more natural, organic exit to the situation. Because I don't know if maybe you've got like an idea in mind of how things should go. It happens, you know. And when you're trying to navigate a difficult situation, you want at least kind of a plan. But being open to possibility as to how to best protect your own interests in this situation. Because it can be very emotionally taxing. Every single day you have to stay in a situation that isn't for you. Page of Cups in reverse. Yeah. I'm almost getting like, I don't want to say like behavioral issues, but it's like the behavioral impact of a difficult situation. And maybe that's something that just from the outside isn't clear to other people, like why you're acting the way you're acting, which is fine. They don't have to understand everything. That is a very like stay in your lane moment for me. But I don't know, people will just kind of window gaze, like what this little kitty's doing, and then make judgments, come to conclusions without ever talking to the page to see like what is going on. And they might even find out that way that it's none of their business. Like reinforcing the boundaries there, which could reinforce whatever conclusions they might be coming to about you on your own or on their own. To that same token, though, that was one of the big changes I feel like in my mental process going through individuation, was detaching myself from caring what other people think. Like I don't want to be just like flippant and like forget you, like whatever, but also, and if we're making conclusions about me and not talking to me about it, forget you. Like miss me with that. Why would I spend any time like toiling over someone who isn't even dropping me a text? You know? Like go get your drama somewhere else. I don't want any part of it. But people like a show. They might be watching whatever you're engaging in that made you a pariah. Like if we stick with the work example, maybe you reported something and that's an immediate guilty until proven innocent sort of situation, the person reporting the wrongdoing. And it doesn't matter what anybody says, that like is functionally how things play out. That might not be what it says in policy, but things are up to interpretation. I wonder, can we get... what's the nature of the conflict here? Of the pariah-inducing event? What's the nature of the conflict? So it feels interpersonal. And it's kind of a weird... because systems and corporations and whatnot, they're not sentient. They're not entities. They're business entities, yes. But you can't be unfair to a not sentient thing, not in the same way that you can be to a human. And it happens all the time in employment. And what, I can't remember the last statistic I saw. It was like every year there's something like $50 billion or something lost in wage theft because of like salaried employees that you can just keep ringing them out and ringing them out without paying them overtime, stuff like that. The Abyssal Beast and the Withering Sage. And that Abyssal Beast, that's a pretty intense card. So this is the nature of the conflict? Someone really aggro versus getting like an exhausted hermit. Like the Hermit card. But this can be kind of the lead up to High Priestess archetype, like how that manifests IRL, when the sage becomes so exhausted, so taxed, so drained that they turn within, and then it becomes that like underworld High Priestess energy. And I feel like the sage can also like go through the underworld journey without becoming a High Priestess, but this is more like sticking with the work example. Like say you report something at work and then it inadvertently reveals a bunch of other stuff. Something like that. Like I've been kind of talking about in the last couple of readings, when somebody is like an authoritarian or a tyrant or such in a relationship, they don't stop being that when they come into the office. They just start behaving better. And now we've got flight. So emotions in movement. Churning of... I'm almost getting like the group think. Because those masks, that perception management, it's there for a reason. So that if and when somebody does decide to speak up, there's a defense against that already in place. And if you're reporting things at work, I mean, you want to be familiar with the code of conduct and all that as well, but also state and local laws in terms of like documentation and who to report what to, because there's all sorts of different offices that have like the same topic that they cover, and sometimes there will be a state level and sometimes there will be both a state level and a federal level, so it can get a little tricky. But tell me more about the conflict. Because wrathful compassion is absolutely an appropriate methodology to deal with things like discrimination, unfair labor practices, things like that. That's exactly what that concept is for. It's to bolster you, to empower you to do the right thing and not feel bad about having to take a heavy hand about it. Because look at the harm that's done by things like wage theft, treating somebody differently because of the way they were born, or a medical condition that they're living with. Something completely out of their hands, but they're being tormented in a system that they must participate in to survive. And we've got Nine of Swords in reverse, bringing the nightmare to an end. Yeah. That, again, exactly what wrathful compassion is for. To step in and, like, enough is enough. I'm okay being the villain, being the tattletale, being the whatever you want to call me, but this behavior is going to stop. This harm is going to stop, even if it has to be a battle, me being the pariah, whatever. It's coming to an end. And that can be very taxing for the sage, the hermit that just wants to be with their books and their cat. Knight of Cups in reverse. So you can't contain the full emotional spectrum anymore. Just kind of what we were talking about. Can't just abide by these group expectations, especially when something is like beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's one thing to like have a suspicion about it, but once you see something for sure, concrete in front of your face, then that's really a moment where you have to sit with yourself, like work through the initial urge for your brain to want to put that in the denial bucket and like, no, go away. This doesn't match my worldview. Don't put it in front of my face. That's hard. And it is hard. But when you see something wrong, depending on what it is, you might not need to act right away. And it might be a good idea to not. Like, collect yourself. Any potential documentation you might have or be able to have. Verify things like company policy. If you have a union rep, what does it take to get support from them? How do you get represented? What's that process? You know, whatever the case may be. Because there's a consistent pattern with the person coming forward. You will be villainized. Like, I would put money down on that will happen. It's just not... Like, how many times do we actually see somebody who's doing something wrong, like, just, yeah, I suck. Like, I did this terrible thing that's illegal and whatnot. Like, they're going to be going into panic mode because they've been caught. And you might be the next excuse that they're going to use. Like, well, they were mean to me. Like, I discriminated against them because they were mean. You can't do that. Like, what is it? 2 wrongs don't make a right? All that? 2 pentacles. 2 of pentacles in reverse. And the devil upright. And she looks worried. He's got the ice cream. Like, he's really giving me the creeps. It's a creepy devil. I don't know if I've got this card in this deck before, but the cats, it seems like, are trying to get their attention. So he's got the ice cream and the money in his hands, and the cats are like clawing at their legs. It's kind of like, hey, pay attention. Like, this is an illusion. This is temptation. It's going to take you out of balance. So maybe there's a dynamic like that in this conflict. Something to try and make you look bad. It's bringing to mind the first gal that spoke up about Weinstein. She's from Charmed. Rose McGowan. And there was this like private security firm that was hired to like investigate her, Black Cube or whatever, which kind of doubles up on the Capricorn energy, Saturn, the black cube of Saturn and all that. But so maybe there's something like that, just maybe not that elaborate, I don't know, but some sort of like provocation, I guess, to try and get you to act out of character, act out of turn, get you riled up, ruffle your feathers. But there's something tugging at you. Maybe it is an emotional support animal, you know. My cat has pulled me out of rumination, just checks on me in regards to seizures, things like that. She's pulled me out of nightmares too, like meowing at me and stuff like that. So it's maybe an unlikely source is trying to get your attention. I don't know. It almost feels like a warning. What's the warning for or about? Because it's like anything to avoid accountability, you know? So if they can make you look bad, it not only might, the fractured veil. There we go. The illusion, but it's not a very good one. But if they're able to make you look bad, it not only gets them out of this immediate situation, it gives them an excuse for the future. Like, woe is me, the target of the town, you know. Just the whole victim play, things like that. But so the fractured veil, it's like the illusion that's attempting to be cast. So that could be more High Priestess energy. And, you know, since we are doing a witch reading here, was really my intention. Because who knows better about villain eras than witches, as those birds go outside. Oh, and crossroads. Hecate. Perfect. Where's I going with that? Witches? I don't remember. Completely lost my train of thought. Oh, High Priestess. Maybe it is like practitioner versus practitioner. Because on the one hand, there is just the like perception management and manipulation and things like that. But if you are dealing with either a practitioner or someone who has hired a practitioner, like an Etsy witch or something like that, glamour magic might be the thing here, because that's about projecting a different vibe of self. That would be the like projection of the persona, getting people to see only what you want them to see. But with glamour magic, there's a lot involved with like color psychology and things like that. So it's interesting. Like, kind of like what people do with interviews. Like, blue is a popular color for interviews. It's a pretty neutral color. Red would be a little bit more aggressive. But what else about this fractured veil and the crossroads? So maybe this is you deciding how to move forward. Just taking the bottom one. Four of Cups. Apathy. Maybe a little analysis paralysis. Very taxing situation. This could also be on the other side of the table. Them toiling over this illusion, because maybe this temptation over here is trying to divert you down a different path, you know, at the crossroads. whatever path that you are after is to the right, and they're trying to corral you over to the left. But the problem is it has to be done in an illusory way. It can't be obvious in order to maintain this like victim position that they didn't do anything wrong. And they might believe that. That might be an earnest belief. If they believe that they're above whatever rule set is applicable here, company policy, laws, whatever, they might feel entitled to treat you poorly. That is, again, where wrathful compassion comes in, because they're not. They can feel that way all they want. The problem is when they start doing something about it, start taking action against you that causes you harm. That's the line. Because thoughts are just thoughts. What else about this Four of Cups? I just got... How do I phrase this? It's almost like a charlatan. As if you are a practitioner, but they're trying to imitate you. Like whatever energy, vibe you bring to this conflict, the truth teller, the standing up for the little guy, what have you, they're trying to mimic that. And I don't really like this phrase, but I hear it a lot. Destiny swap. So maybe this crossroads is they're trying to kind of switch places, like get the consequences of this situation to go to you instead of them, which means this perception has to be created about you. But you have to be tempted in some way. Because, you know, all the stories about vampires and whatnot, talking about energy vampires, but even just vampires in general, they have to be invited in. And that's the same thing with these kind of conflicts. They might knock at your door, they might be on your stoop, whatnot, but you have to be the one to actually open the door. And if you don't, they can't come in. If you don't invite them, they can't come in. Boundaries. They might make quite the ruckus, though. Maybe you need to watch Underworld. So they're talking about vampires, and there's that line, he's like, what's this ruckus? But Celine, she was the unpopular, like, wrathful compassion. That was a choice that she made in the end, was to not only go against the coven, but go against the leader who she idolized, because it was the right thing to do, because she was making all those discoveries along the way. But then she was like on the run. You know, there's that bit of it. So what else about the fractured veil? Got quiet all of a sudden. It's usually a flippy deck. There we go. Maybe this situation is exhausting. Strength in reverse. Yeah. Nobody said wrathful compassion would be easy. And especially when you're in direct conflict with somebody, you know, this abyssal beast. That's like a bull. Or even looks like a yak. Those are big. That's a lot of force to come up against. So exhausting. And that could apply to both sides too, because the bull will eventually get exhausted. Might take a while, but that's kind of, I don't know. Can't remember what I was just thinking about. Oh, the last unicorn. She kind of like outran him instead of actually coming up against him. So maybe that's the more quiet aspect of this, that whatever action you're taking, it's not direct. Because maybe this person, situation, system, whatever, they have so much more power than you that you've got to maneuver more carefully, more stealthily. You're outmanned in a way. But that doesn't mean you can't overcome. It just means it's going to be really hard. Page of Pentacles. It's another crossroads. But it looks a lot more, let's say, perked up than the Four of Cups. A lot more optimistic. Maybe you know exactly what you need to do. And there's that coin, something material. Could be knowledge, even. I mean, normally that would be a sword card, but like some nugget of information, that concrete information that you can't not act on, and that kind of reveals the path. Whatever's going on, it seems arduous and lengthy. And impactful, too, actually. Like, talking about big themes socially and at a more micro level. So, protect your interests. If it's not an immediate threat to personal safety, you don't need to act on it. Might feel that way, and that could be a manipulation technique through this to try and like destabilize you, to get you to act out of turn, whatnot, to fit whatever narrative that's been constructed. But keeping your eye on the prize and really understanding why you engaged in something for wrathful compassion. Like, what does this mean to you that you're standing up for? That might be the thing that helps you run on fumes that are running on fumes as you go through a difficult process like this. Let's see. It's a very much one day at a time, especially if you're dealing with some anger. Cujo. It's a sad book and movie. But maybe dealing with hot tempers, things that are out of control, a crash out. You know, that was the ending theme of the last reading, that there might be some sort of crash out going on because somebody's not getting their way. And I know the context of the examples are different. You know, that's talking about a divorce. We're talking more in a work context here. But in any case, when you're dealing with somebody who is antagonistic, is going to avoid accountability at all costs, you do need to protect yourself. And I can't remember the characters' names in this, but they took a lot of steps to try and protect themselves when they came up against Cujo. Because I don't remember if they actually knew until the end that he had rabies. Like, you find that out as the reader early on. But they did not take unnecessary risks with Cujo. They took only necessary ones to try and bring the situation to an end. So maybe put your feet up, read a book, try and disengage from this a little bit, and watch the movie as well. Also Underworld too, but just chewing on that idea of wrathful compassion, because it doesn't feel good to be the hammer, you know? Like, it gets glorified in TV shows and movies and whatnot, but in a real world scenario, when you gotta be the one doing the right thing in the face of people who want to maintain the status quo, that can be really hard. So take care of yourself. And overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.